And first, now after lunch, it is Jakub Morawiec,
yes.
Who is an associate professor in the Institute of History at the University of Silesia in Katowice, and head of the Center for Nordic and Old English Studies.
Precisely.
And Jakub has published widely on themes of relevance for medieval Scandinavia, on social history and royal ideologies, among other things, and very often based on a very broad textual field, including many different sagas, king sagas, legendary sagas, and also Skaldic poetry. Very general view on much of the medieval Norse literature. And today the talk will combine the royal ideology of power and traumatic experiences to fit to the theme of the workshop. And it's wonderful to have you here. And I have known Jakub for quite many years, back from an Erasmus-based collaboration where both our universities were part. And that was back in the days, but it has been running since. Yep. But it's actually been quite a few years. It's very nice to have you here, have you back.
Thank you.
And have the chance to catch up here in Aarhus. So thank you to Yoav again for inviting you to this university. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pernille. Thank you very much for your very kind introduction. I would like to thank very much Dr. Tirosh, as Yoav, for inviting me and making me a part of this great workshop. Before I start, I'm not sure what I should do in order to avoid stop converting the Zoom things.
Oh, just move it aside. Don't stop it.
Don't stop it. Okay.
Because that's the video that we can later.
All right. And what can I? Okay. Okay. Because it may cause some trauma when I don't see slides properly. So please help me because it's marking them.
Yeah, it's a generational thing.
Yeah. Whoa. Chicken. He was he was criticizing himself actually. All right. Okay. So trying to answer somehow proper and expected by Yoav way for his invitation to take part in today's meeting, I was thinking like, how could I contribute to this intriguing and somehow still kind of mysterious topic, how we should define medieval trauma? What is it, medieval trauma? So looking back on my attempts to study almost literature, almost culture and history of medieval Scandinavia, I thought that perhaps the chance is just behind the corner, which is something that probably everybody knows pretty well, which is the royal ideology, something a kind of a very important thing or element of medieval identity, social structure, political, cultural, and so forth. And I would like to focus on one specific aspect of this important element, which is the concept of just ruler, Rex Justus, that encompasses certain aspects, elements of ruler's activities, especially towards his subjects. So theoretizing for a while, we can think or depict a just ruler as the one who takes care of a provision and execution of law. He's expected to authorize a certain amount of norms and then, of course, prosecute those who are not willing to follow the ruler's norms. So those who are willing, able to stay loyal to those norms are, of course, the ones that he treats good way. Sometimes we call it in political way like that they are his friends, his supporters. And consequently, those who either cannot or do not follow it, they are the ruler's enemies, who should be punished for their approach to ruler's activities as a just ruler. So in order to be a properly just, he has to protect his land, his subjects, This protection sometimes means or meant ability to, I think still means, ability to provide peace, and also it's good if it is combined, for example, with good seasons, so people can kind of live their lives in a relatively easy way. And of course, at the same time, it means an ability, or meant, and means ability to focus on those who provide potential. Zoom is still installing things. Provide a constant threat to this protection and norms and peace and so forth. That's why those people are mostly labeled as either evildoers or simply rebels, because this loyalty is, so I think, key to understand whether somebody is able to fulfill this readiness to follow the norm or not. What's more, even if we are mainly focused on the relation between a ruler and his subjects, we have to remember that this abilities to show off the skills to provide just reign somehow is transferred via focus on those who potentially are not his direct subjects, and maybe people who live nearby and may cause potential threat. So this just rule also refers to them. So there are two dimensions. One is the internal, and there's some that could be defined as external aspect of this just rulership. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I need your help. Sorry. It's truly generational thing. I would even say technological thing, because somehow I cannot follow my.
How did you manage?
I didn't do anything. That's the problem.
Well, okay, we'll just do it like this, and they'll have to see the presenter view.
Can we? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. So this concept is also quite early attested in medieval Scandinavia, and can refer to one of the stanzas composed by Sigvardur Thordarson that refer to Olafur Haraldsson of the Saint and the King of Norway, where the poet depicts the king as the destroyer of the race of thieves. So it's the direct reference to not only certain group of people, but also their activities. They are depicted as something that breaks the norm and demands king's reaction, direct reaction. And it has to be very uncompromising reaction. There is no space for any negotiations with those people. They have to be destroyed. And in this case, the king is praised for this ability, readiness and ability to withstand the threat provided by those who break the potentially legal norm. Which means that I think it's something is.
Keeps happening.
Okay. No, this very stanza by Sigvardur Thordarson points at something that we could call as a kind of negative aspects of this just rulership. It's just that the king is focused on punishing, destroying, eliminating those who provide certain threat or just directly break the norm. Whereas the whole concept also encompasses things that could be potentially considered as a positive aspects of this whole thing, like ability to provide a law, a peace, and so forth. And fortunately, there are certain examples of this kind of positive approach, even if, or contrary to the to Sven Agesen, who seems to kind of ironize a little bit on that. The legendary Danish king is able to fulfill the meaning of his name by his actions. Yes, so he protects the realm. Potentially, he protects those who live in the realm and are his subjects. That's why it is first absolutely proper to name his skjold, which is shield, and also as Sven Agesen highlights slightly later in his text, following the poetry of Icelanders, to call the kings skjoldungar, so the ones who are able to protect potentially the land and people who inhabit the land that is under rulers' control. Moreover, Sven Agesen, later on, it is also developed by Saxo Grammaticus in his Gesta Ganorum. We have this very well-known story about both father and son, King Vermund the Wise and his son Ufi, where Vermund is too old to be able to protect the kingdom himself, and he's surprised by his son, who is said not to be able to do it. But finally, he's able to protect Danish kingdom, having a duel with the emperor's champion, and that's why he is able to save the whole kingdom. So this is this kind of a positive aspect. However, today, in order to kind of refer to the general idea of our meeting and this attempts to trace these aspects of medieval trauma, I would like to focus on examples that rather center on this so negative aspects of the whole thing. That just ruler is first of all a punisher who provides a punishment for those who break the norm that he provides, and what is expected is, as in the case of Olafur Tryggvason, ability to do it right, do it quickly, and do it effectively. So the punishment has to be severe, and this is important to identify to identify the groups that are the objects of kings' wrath, also kings' just rulership. So these evildoers, thieves, murderers, that's one thing. But we could also look for, first of all, kind of political categories, the rebels, that actually, this ability to break the rule means that you rebel, it's questioning of rulers' authority. So, of course, the rebels are a very good category here. And in the case of this external aspect of this relation between the ruler and the subjects, two categories are especially visible: Vikings and Christian Scandinavian kings became famous for being able to withstand the threat provided by Vikings. And of course, the other category, somehow close to the first one, are pagans. So we could say that to some extent, this idea of ruler being a just monarch, king, a jarl, prince, whatever, is based on things of elements that could be considered traumatic for rulers' subjects, because they are able to evoke certain negative resentments concerning rulers' actions. Trying to agree somehow with what present-day theories highlight or say about psychological trauma, I would list two things, and the second is especially, I think, relevant for the topic, because it's not about long-standing elements of emotional responses to certain things. Rather, I would focus on the second part, which is indirect exposures that are made by an access to some, for example, media footage. Torvi called the poetry Twitter of the Middle Ages, and I think it fits pretty well, and that's why some of my examples actually refer to the skaldic poetry, where probably it was important to quickly somehow readily evoke certain elements that could be attached to something that the theory recognizes as kind of stress response. So in other words, this exposure to certain negative things were meant to produce certain area of recognition of things that could be, perhaps naively, I don't know, called traumatic because of the character and circumstances that could be used. These elements, of course, are not restricted to medieval Scandinavia only. This is, of course, a much larger phenomenon. And I would like to jump a little bit for a while for the Central European context and pay attention to two accounts that touch this problem as well. And the first one refers to the Polish ruler Bolesław the Brave and is provided by Dietmar, Archbishop of Merseburg in early 11th century. It is important, Dietmar didn't like Bolesław the Brave, mostly because the Polish ruler did his best not to recognize the king and later Emperor Henry II as his superior. That's why Dietmar had only bad opinions about the Polish ruler, except for several things, including this: how the king was able to execute the law he provided. Unfortunately, I can do it. Oops. It was not my intention to. Okay, anyway, this is account on initially the fourth wife of Bolesław, named Oda. She was of German origin, and when she became Bolesław's wife, Dietmar found it important to relate to certain aspects of his rule, and I think I will see it better here that he was able to provide certain customs, many of them which varied. They are also harsh, but occasionally quite praiseworthy. And this praiseworthiness in Dietmar's mouth concerning Bolesław, this kind of exceptional thing. Without severe punishment, the prince cannot put them to any useful purpose. If anyone in this land, in Poland, should presume to abuse a foreign matron and thereby commit fornication, the act is immediately avenged through the following punishment. The guilty party is led on the market bridge, and his scrotum is affixed to it with a nail. Then, after a sharp knife has been placed next to him, he is given the harsh choice between death or castration. Furthermore, anyone found to have eaten meat after Septuagesima is severely punished by having his teeth knocked out. The law of God, newly introduced in these regions, gains more strength from such acts of force than from any fast imposed by the bishops. And Dietmar is bishop himself. And the importance of ability to not only provide, but also to execute the law and to prove that the ruler is a just monarch in this case deserves a prize even in this very kind of indirect, but still impersonal relation between the chronicler and the king. The other account, although refers to rather a legendary figure, the protagonist of the Czech dynasty, Przemysl, was recorded in early 12th century by Prague cleric Cosmas in his Chronica Bohemorum. The first parts of the chronicle refer to the times of rule of a woman named Lubosza, who is ruling Czechs. And at some point, her subjects are less and less happy with the fact that they are ruled by a woman. And they start to looking for a proper man who will take over the charge of the whole territory and replace Lubosza. So she, as a current ruler, she organizes a thing, the assembly, in order to discuss the thing with the Czechs. What she does, the account is not so, perhaps I can just summarize it. She just provides Czechs with a vision of future reign by Przemysl that is full of things that could potentially, among the Czechs, evoke only traumatic things, like a burden of law, taxation, lack of freedom, and so forth. Yes, this vision seems to be very, very radical and negative, especially taken out of context. This is something that we would probably like to avoid because our personal freedom is endangered. And when the whole vision is fulfilled by Bush, those who are gathered at the assembly say something that probably is something completely opposite to what Cosmas probably would like to evoke among the readers. Because instead of saying, all right, we would like to stay under your rule, Lubosha, because our freedom then is, preserved, they say, well, they jumped up with a discordant shout. With one voice, everyone demanded a duke to be given to them. So despite this harsh vision of severe rulership, severe law, and all the norms, they prefer to lose what Lubosha presents them as their personal freedom in order to be under this new reign provided by a future duke, which means the just and harsh rulership. Yes. So perhaps the idea is that we even joked yesterday. This is kind of very good resemblance of what is currently going on. Like that, they prefer to rule of the dictator rather than the rule of a woman. In this case, they prefer a rule of somebody who is able to fulfill the duties of Rex Justus rather than Lubosha. And the choice is obvious, yes, because what follows then is the history of the dynasty that was chosen despite this prospects of loss of personal, social, personal, political freedom. So as we can see, it's something more general, and in many places at the same time, people could refer to this dilemma of why a ruler has to be not only generous, not only brave in the battle, he has to also be a just ruler, providing law and executing the law effectively. So we can go back to North, and I will also focus on this Twitter of early medieval Scandinavia, going back to Olafur Haraldsson and other rulers, where poets seem to focus on this idea of a king able to eliminate serious aspects of breaking this norm and law. In this case, again, they see the treachery that can be eliminated only by a proper ruler. And intriguing fact is that, in theory at least, Vikingarvisur does not refer to Norwegian subjects of Olafur. It's about people who he raided here and there. And we can assume that idea of Olafur as a Viking leader, proving his skills as just ruler beyond this context of Norway as his kingdom, was to show up that, well, the king has already proven his skills. And if any of you, and as we learn in tradition, he had to face the treachery. He is and he will be able to act or counteract properly. The same goes with another stanza. Again, those whom he raids are classified as thieves. We don't know what they actually stole to the king, but he is the one who oppresses them. And he is praised not by killing them, not by robbing them, no, by punishing them for something they potentially could do to him. So this is this kind of external aspect of something that potentially, perhaps this was the idea of both the poet and the king, should later on focus on this internal aspect of the whole concept. Then element that, or elements that kind of gravitate us to this other aspects of this external element of the Rex Iustus concept. We see that the king is not only active but effective in executing the law. He provides destruction and loss, and one can imagine that this idea of destruction and fire and loss is just to evoke certain things in those who are recipients of the poem, to prove that king is able to do it and can do it anytime he thinks is needed. And unsurprisingly, it is so tightly connected with this poet, Otto Sparky, and other poets' willingness to underline Olaf's rulership and his right to be a ruler. Yes, he actually undisputedly deserves to be treated as a king, and the one of the worst crimes against the ruler, which is the treachery, deserves the harsh and severe punishment, here depicted and symbolized by fire and smoke of destroyed settlements of those who decided to oppose against the king. Of course, by the way, he was also prized by his warlike activities, because here this is a great chance, great opportunity to actually focus on this as well. Again, Olafur Haraldsson, this time depicted already after his death, and this is interesting because one could say that once he lived, the elements that could be connected with his missionary activities somehow are limited to this idea of him being a just ruler. Only after his death, his focus on providing new religion as a new base of new norms and so forth is emphasized by the poets. Anyway, this idea of him as a harsh ruler against those who oppose him is still, of course, preserved. Okay, then it is also attached to the way poets depict his son, Magnus the Good. And actually, the event that supposedly took place in somehow summer 1043, when Magnus decided to attack Volyn, was found as a very good example or good opportunity to underline king's royal ability to not only effectively defeat his enemies, but also to show how just he is through such an actions. So again, similarly to those who are the targets of Olafur Haraldsson as a Viking leader, inhabitants of Volyn rather should not be considered as regular Magnus subjects, but here they suffer because they potentially did things that Magnus would like to do of his subjects. That's why he has to destroy, eliminate, and punish those who break the norm. And here the norm is broken by thieves and by heathens. So these two things are merged together. That's why king has to show up, provide a destruction and death as a proper punishment for those who decided somehow, perhaps even indirectly, to stand against him. The historical concept is that probably Volyn and elites ruling Volyn decided to ally with Svein Ulfsson in his strives against Magnus the Good in Denmark. And it looks like this very action was not only in the case of, well, such a regular Viking raid, for example, to kind of restore the king's resources. it is depicted mainly as a example, very good example, very clear example of king's ability to react properly on acts of disloyalty against him, but also against God, because those people are here as all Christian Israel. Heathens, that's why they are evildoers, thieves, generally, they deserve the king's punishment. And we know both from the poetry and later sagas that Magnus was also focused on fighting against potential supporters of Svein Ulfsson in different parts of Denmark. And we can imagine an idea that this message was directed actually to those people. Inhabitants of Volyn were a clear example of what can happen to others, the real subjects of the king, who would decide to choose the wrong side. That's why provided treachery that has to be severely punished, as Magnus showed up in Volyn. It was already mentioned by Torvi in his talk that this acts that somehow should be classified as elements of trauma also evoked or connected with things that people were supposed to remember. So this case, these elements of trauma are directed towards the inhabitants of Volyn. They are supposed to remember that kings did something and can potentially repeat it. But of course, again, we can assume that it's the same way directed to his real subjects. They should remember that the king is always on ability on this instant to act or react properly to this. So if we're looking for some traumatic elements of this whole concept, it's also connected with ability to memorize all these negative concepts that are attached to the idea of king as a just ruler. In the case of Danish monarch, Erik Eygot Sveinsson, we see very interesting combination of at least 3 different elements that actually are kind of tied in one. Not only in one stanza, not even in one poem, as Erik's Drapa is, but actually probably in one a depiction of the whole idea of Eirikur, in this case, as a just ruler. Because he is not only able to properly react towards the threat provided by Wends, enemies of Danes, who, of course, are pagans. Because of their status as pagans, they are automatically classified as those who are very eager to provide treachery toward Danish king. And it is also kind of tied with, and this reference is probably absolutely not accidental, even if it is also metrically justified, the reference to the King Knut, so Erik's brother. Of course, the depiction of Knut the Saint as very severe, just ruler is mainly developed later in the sagas, especially in Knitinga saga, but probably this connection here is not accidental. So Knut probably was used as another clear example of such way, ability and effectiveness in executing everything that encompasses a just ruler. So all 3 elements it was possible by Marcus to combine them in one stanza, clearly showing us this close connection between, in theory, separate elements here combined together in order to kind of create a probably as full as possible, as clear as possible idea of king as the one who is ruling justly. Which directs us towards certain analysis of this all, yes, that this concept paid a lot of attention to a king not as a providers of something that would be considered good, which is peace, good seasons, it's protection, but that those positive things are received through something that is rather kind of negative in a way, because can burn out and can evoke certain negative resentments, which is the punishment. So king is not gracious. King is not he is protective, of course, but he's first of all severe and unmerciful punishment, and he punishes his subjects for at least two main aspects of disloyalty towards him personally, but also for disloyalty towards God. And that's why this very, on one hand, clear and very straightforward connection between being rebellious, being a breaker of norm of any kind, with paganism is so, first of all, willingly and frequently used by these poets, because probably it was kind of very easy to connect in the mindset of those who are recipients of this poem, that this connection is actually working well towards the idea of a king as a just ruler. So these traumatic elements are strictly the result of certain aura of fear that those elements were probably supposed to create among the recipients of the poems. That this loyalty, breaking of norm, can only end up with very negative things: death, destruction, loss, demise, on any kind. And we can assume that for those who are recipients of this idea, or the poets and the rulers was that they will be very easily, clearly able to somehow find connection between those aspects. And this shorter trauma caused by all this media footage that we are attacked with should work here as well, yes? It doesn't mean, though, those people already fulfill those bad categories. This is a kind of a warning that if you do this, you will be severely punished, and the key is to understand that it is a real thing, because we can evoke these negative aspects, yes, either because of our personal experience or experience of others, no matter if we know them. We don't have to know them. It's enough if we clearly can define them: thieves, murderers, rebels, Vikings, pagans, yes, because those are those categories that are clear, undisputable objects of kings, rulers, just reign. I hope somehow it is convincingly possible to show that if we are, as I said at the beginning, looking for elements of this medieval trauma, this aspect of royal ideology, something on one hand important and easily to recognize, can be one of the ways to look for these things. Thank you very much. I know that I'm just at time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for this interesting talk. And it's not that you have been speaking too long. We were a little bit late, so it's perfectly fine. You're spot on. But it would be nice to have just a chance to have a few comments. And we have a little time in the end where Yoav will do a summary, and we can perhaps return to more if that's the case. But thank you so much. I really find it interesting to see this aspect of the other side, or the backside of what happens when the law is followed, even though it's only the thought about the law being followed, and how little we actually work with all dimensions of society. Also think also about victimhood in this context. And I also thought about the Skaldic poetry in connection to what you said, that it has this rhetoric of fear, which is very much a rhetoric and not necessarily something that is happening, but that also is used to control as a means of control.
Yeah.
I think that's very fascinating. So thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
Tori, you,
Well,
Mark, and you have.
Yes, I thought it was really fascinating. It's about the traumatizing terror of power in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
And this particular type of power that is being introduced, which is, it's even more traumatizing. It's extremely violent, but it's even more traumatizing because it has right on its side.
Yeah.
So you're not only negated by the violence, but also by the fact that the violence against you is legitimate.
Yes.
So it's a terrible thing. I wonder if you thought of the other way around, whether it is traumatizing also to have an unjust king. But it's maybe the topic of another one. But it is a bit about that.
Yeah.
The unjust treatment that it suffers from Eric Bloodhounds. And so, but
I would completely agree.
probably off topic,
Yeah.
but I thought it
Yes
was
and no at the same time.
Yeah.
Perhaps it would require more time or examples to show up that, well, of course, if generally a ruler is not able to fulfill his duties, including everything that we define as elements of him being just, should be, of course, not only criticized, but also provide some consequences to him. Absolutely right. And I think this is the other side of the whole thing. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I wish we had more time because there's so much to talk about. First of all, I just want to make a literary reference to you, which is that the example that you give of this queen that warns about the king, about the duke. So I think that it would be interesting to compare it to the speech that Einar of Tvera gives in Heimskringla, where he kind of warns the people of, letting the king encroach on their power, and also the Book of Samuel, where you have a speech that the prophet gives. It's called the speech of the king. And I'm sure there's more occurrences like this because it's a biblical reference. But it's very interesting also how you connected it to contemporary politics in a very creepy and sad way. But
well, I didn't want to be totally direct, but we had these thoughts yesterday.
it was quite
very recent product, actually.
But another thing that maybe a bit more complex thought that is hard to articulate, but just in Torvi's talk and your talk and in Pernille's comment earlier about the orality, I keep thinking about type scenes and about how genre, the operations of genre, the machinations of genre, the literary conventions are on the one hand traumatizing, but on the other hand, they help you to recover. They help you to deal with the traumatizing experiences. And I'm thinking specifically about Stephen Shema's work, an MA thesis that he wrote with Armand's and Torvi's paranormal project. And there Stephen talks about how the violence described in skaldic poetry is meant to prepare the warrior to what he's going to see in battle. So I really found it interesting because on the one hand, I totally think that Stephen is correct. On the other hand, I totally think that you're correct. But it's like, on the one hand, it heals you, but on the other hand, it traumatizes you. But then maybe it connects to my trip in Poland, which is, I was inserted into the collective of, the oppressed Jews by experiencing, the various Auschwitz places and all that. So.
Yeah, but again, if we are focusing on this preparation thing, you can say that, well, this is to prepare subjects what to expect, like how to prepare warriors, what to expect on the battlefield, for example. One, I think, does not exclude the other, I think, perhaps. And again, of course, this is the beauty of this very condensed, short message, because, of course, if we take prose account, it's more space to kind of explain all the aspects, yes? However, here, the method kind of dictates the conditions of what to choose, what elements to provide in order to make it probably relatively clear that, well, this is what was meant to convey. So, yeah.
I just want to look quickly if there's somebody here who wants to ask something. I'm not sure. I don't think so. No,
No.
I think we are fine. So did you have a comment? Can we make it very short and then save the rest for after your own
Yeah,
talk?
sure. So, I mean,
No,
whatever
no.
you prefer, yes.
Give it
It
us.
might be, I don't know, I mean, well, maybe I'll just signal it and then maybe.
Yes,
that
we can
maybe
come.
send it.
Yes.
Thanks so much, for this. Wow, this is great. And it's to a large extent about the emotionality of power, obviously, yes.
Oh.
I was just thinking whether it is possible to, and that's a quick question which you don't have to answer right now, perhaps we can return it to later, whether it is possible to imagine a different form of exertion of power, yes, which would not necessarily sort of be connected with kind of this kind of traumatization, yes. And I'm thinking of the kind of the model of the king as a sort of saint figure, and the appeal of a sort of saintly figure. Or I'm thinking in particular of some of the by names, yes, that some of these early medieval kings would be given. And on the one hand, you've got Harald Hardradi, yes, or Basil the Bulgar slayer and so on. But then you'd have this 10th century king of England, yes, or Wessex morphing into England, Edgar the Peaceful, or Edgar the Peaceful, signing peace treaties and sort of extending the power of English kings, and England into the Danelaw, by means of sort of the soft power, as it were, of England. But that's a question that I.
I would love to at least shortly answer that first with two statements of, I think, very referential. Well, is that the politics or just power means emotions.
Yes.
Secondly, the same Titmar praised Otto I for providing peace, waging war against anybody who was eager to break the peace. So you have this very clear connection between both two. And also when we talk about a ruler as a potential saint, this is very well-known aspect of Olaf the Saint as a saint because he's a harsh opponent of pagans. So this military aspect is still preserved, yes? Yeah. Okay, and I think that whatever we take, it was supposed to provide certain amount of emotions, even if, for example, a king is gracious, ruler is gracious, yes, what is expected. And the poetry is full of references to this. So I'm not sure if it is, perhaps it was, I don't know. But if it really was possible to separate any aspect of rulership, of reigning on certain people, certain land, from some amount of emotions that would legitimize and properly depict the rule. Yes. I don't know. Yeah, okay, I'm
Yes.
okay.